The K9 dog wouldn't stop barking at a woman carrying a baby. The truth behind it has left the entire terminal in shock. She didn't scream. She didn't run. A well-dressed woman, cradling a sleeping baby, walked through the crowded airport. So why did the service dog go crazy? Why did you block her way, growl, and refuse to back down, even when everyone told her to stop? What did he see that no one else saw? What was discovered next at Bozeman Airport left all passengers motionless, incredulous. I would trust the dog, or on the mother. Outside the glass walls of Gallatin Field Airport in Bozeman, Montana, a blanket of late winter snow fell gently over the runway. The sky was the color of faded denim, and the cold in the air gave a dry cut with each breath. Inside the terminal, however, the atmosphere was far from calm. Delays caused by bad weather had pushed travelers into tight lines. Voices full of frustration, and the smell of burnt coffee mingled with the acrid odor of thawing clinging to their boots. The clock above boarding gate 4 read 11 p.m. Agent Olivia Barnes adjusted the visor of her navy blue cap and gently pulled on the leash of her K9 partner, Ranger. Ranger, a 5-year-old male German shepherd, was the type to attract attention. The fur shone in shades of black and rust, impeccably cared for. His gait was disciplined but fluid, muscles tense under his coat. But what really distinguished Ranger wasn't his looks, it was his story. A dog was also found in the wreckage of a caravan fire on the outskirts of Missoula, guarding the body of an elderly woman who had perished in the flames. He refused to leave the place for 2 full days, until firefighters managed to rescue him. This trauma has engraved a sixth sense in her, especially in relation to children and vulnerable people. That's what led to it being chosen for a rare behavioral threat detection program. Unlike dogs trained for drugs or explosives, Ranger specialized in people. Beside him walked Olivia, a woman in her late 30s, red hair tied in a tight bun and athletic body. His eyes, a sharp green, swept the terminal with the habit of someone who is never completely out of service. He had served 12 years in the police, most of it on urban patrols. But after a personal incident, the disappearance of his niece, fortunately found alive days later, he asked for a transfer to the K9 unit. The bond with Ranger had grown from a shared trauma to an almost wordless partnership. They were approaching the baggage claim area when Ranger suddenly slowed down. The ears rose, the body became rigid, energy contained. Olivia followed his gaze. About 6 meters away, a woman in an elegant gray coat slid along an area of full seats. She would be just over 30 years old, tall, with black hair tied in a low bun, flawless makeup, scarf with expensive brand pattern. In her arms, a baby, perhaps a year old or younger, wrapped in a pale blue blanket, his head motionless over her shoulder. Ranger let out a low, questioning yelp. "What's wrong, mate?" Olivia murmured, watching him. The dog's head tilted. Then the body changed posture. Ears back, tail stretched, eyes fixed on the woman and baby. The yelp turned into a deep growl. Olivia tensed. Ranger rarely growled. He had been trained to signal subtly. It only escalated if something was really wrong. He stepped forward, his voice calm but firm. "Madam, may I speak to you for a moment?" The woman turned around, surprised. Up close, fine features, pale skin and no imperfections. Ice blue eyes, wide open but neutral expression. "Yes," she replied politely, clutching the baby to her chest. "I'm Agent Barnes, Bozeman's K9 unit. My partner is indicating some concern. Can you tell me your destination and show the boarding pass?" The woman hesitated for a moment. "Of course. I'm going to Denver, American Airlines. My name is Vanessa Reed." Ranger barked loudly, once, then another. People turned around. Mobile phones rose. Olivia clenched her jaw. "Squeaking! Silence!" he said, but without conviction. Deep down, I trusted him. The baby had not moved once, neither with the barking, nor with the movement. Olivia's heart tightened. "Did Denver say?" "Yes," Vanessa replied serenely. "Strange. I was told that American canceled all flights to Denver 2 hours ago because of the snowstorm." Vanessa blinked her eyes. "Oh, I meant United. I'm a little confused." It was a long morning. Ranger growled again, lower, vibrating in his chest. The baby remained motionless, too immobile. Before Olivia could speak, the radio crackled. He brought it to his ear. The dispatcher's voice sounded calm but urgent. "Agent Barnes, we have an alert from the Belgrade Police Department. Missing child, male, 2 years old, last seen with a woman who matches the description he previously requested. Possible abduction. Proceed with caution." Olivia's heart pounded hard against her ribs. He looked at the child again. Blue blanket, soft brown curls. He looked up at the woman, who was now shifting her weight from one foot to the other. "Madam, I will have to ask you to accompany me to answer a few additional questions." Vanessa's voice froze. "I don't see the need. I didn't do anything wrong. My baby is sleeping. Let's catch a flight." Ranger took one step forward. Her whole body was tense, her eyes fixed not on Vanessa, but on the child. The woman took a step back. "You can't just accuse me," he snapped, his tone rising. "Please," Olivia said, keeping her voice calm. "For the baby's safety, I ask for your cooperation." At that moment, a woman entered the terminal through the south entrance. He was in his late 70s, gray curls hidden under a woolen cap, cheeks flushed with the cold. His name was Elaine Moore. He had driven from Belgrade when he saw the photograph in the anonymous message. He clutched a folder with laminated photographs and medical records to his chest. When Eleanor saw the baby, she dropped the briefcase. "Toby," he whispered. "Oh my God, Toby." Vanessa turned sharply, eyes wide. Olivia instinctively placed herself between them. Ranger barked again, louder than ever, and stood protectively in front of the child. It all happened at the same time. Olivia raised her voice above the confusion. "Everyone back off. This is a police situation." Vanessa stood still, clinging to the baby. Ranger didn't move. His body completely blocked his passage. And in that moment, Olivia knew that whatever this woman had done, or wherever she tried to go, Ranger had stopped in time. The hum of the airport faded into an eerie silence as Olivia ushered the woman who had identified herself as Vanessa Reed to a quieter area near the administrative entrance. The tension around them, though muffled by the soft murmur of announcements and distant footsteps, remained dense, stretched like a steel thread of uncertainty. Ranger walked slightly ahead, body rigid, tail low and tense, each movement alert, calculated, as if measuring the invisible weight of the air between the woman and child in his arms. Vanessa sat up slowly, adjusting the baby who was still limp and motionless under the fluffy blue blanket. Olivia noticed that disturbing stillness again. No movement of legs, no visible breath on the edge of the blanket. Most children move, even in their sleep, but this one could well have been carved in wax. Olivia crouched down next to the adapted stroller chair, her voice calm but firm. "Madam, can I see some identification, please? Yours and the child's." Vanessa hesitated. "I already told you we're going to Denver. My document is in my suitcase. The baby's papers are in the hold luggage." "You understand, I hope," Olivia said, maintaining eye contact, "that given the alert we received, I need to confirm your identity and that of the child." Vanessa opened the branded suitcase with a sigh that mixed irritation and false calm. His fingers, though elegant and pale pink, trembled slightly. He pulled out a leather wallet and pulled out a driver's license. Olivia examined the details. Vanessa Reed, issued in Montana, 14 months of use. Too clean. No worn corners, no wear and tear. Either that woman took impeccable care of her documents, or she didn't use them much. "I said I was flying with American Airlines," Olivia said casually. "Yes, well, United. Actually, I was wrong. It was a long day." "You also mentioned that your husband would find her." "What is his name?" "David." "David Reed. And where is he waiting for you?" "In Chicago." But Olivia had already noticed the hesitation. Half a second more to answer. Before he could insist, Ranger let out a low puff and repositioned himself, his eyes fixed on the baby. At that moment, the speakers sounded, and Olivia's radio crackled. "Unit 12, attention. A woman named Eleanor Moore approaches checkpoint 5. He claims to have visual confirmation of a child that corresponds to Belgrade's alert. Old woman, gray coat, dark boots." Olivia stood up and waved to another agent. "Bring her here." The woman who entered moments later had an air of deep exhaustion etched into the wrinkles on her face. Eleanor Moore was nearly 70 years old, short and slightly bent from years of working in Montana's harsh winters. The eyes, however, were lively, burning with the pain of those who had searched too long. Her gray hair fell into natural curls, her cheeks burned by the wind. He pressed a briefcase to his chest. When he saw the child, his knees gave way slightly. "It's him," he whispered, his voice breaking. "It's my grandson. It's Toby." Vanessa's face turned pale. "I don't know who this woman is. This is my baby." Eleanor moved forward, tears welling up quickly. "He has a scar behind his left ear, from a dog bite when he fell in the garden at 14 months. Olivia's gaze hardened. "Madam," he said, addressing Vanessa, "can I check that identifying mark?" "No," Vanessa squeezed the child even more. "It's scaring you. He is sensitive. He just fell asleep." Ranger moved slowly but with clear intent, placing himself between Vanessa and the rest of the room. The posture was no longer cautious. It was protective. "Not Vanessa's, but the child's," Olivia said more firmly. "Please let me see the child." Vanessa's eyes drifted to the exit. "Don't run away," Olivia warned. "I'm going to stop you. My dog will stop her." For a split second, everything was suspended. Then Ranger let out a soft, almost sad yelp, the signal he had learned to indicate that a child was in danger. Olivia stepped forward, slowly pulled the blanket, and revealed the baby's face. It was beautiful. Brown curls, round cheeks, but pale unnaturally. Olivia placed 2 fingers on the child's wrist. Weak pulse, shallow breathing, sedated. He looked up at Vanessa. "What did you give him?" "Nothing harmful. Just something to help him sleep." "What did you give him?" Olivia repeated, now in a cutting voice. "Benadryl, childish," he admitted, panicking. "I didn't want you to cry. It was a long trip. I didn't want to scare him." Eleanor gasped. "Toby, my God!" Olivia motioned to a nearby paramedic. "Medical evaluation now." As rescuers approached, Vanessa tried to get up, but Ranger took a step forward, blocking her with only his presence. Eyes fixed on her face, tail stiff, ears pointed forward. A silent guardian. The paramedic, a calm and focused man in his 40s named Josh Grady, knelt next to the baby. Tall, thin, with gray hair on his temples, and a face marked by years of work under pressure. His voice was low and reassuring as he checked his vital signs. "Low respiratory rate, slow pupils reacting. We need to take him to the hospital for toxicology screening and evaluation." Will he be okay?" Eleanor whispered, hand on chest. "We arrived on time," Josh nodded, but it was close. As they prepared the stretcher, Olivia turned to the support officer. "Arrest Vanessa Rachel, whoever it is. We confirm the shadows that marked his cheekbones looked like traces of the person he pretended to be." He refused to speak. Arms crossed tightly, eyes popping out to the window. Olivia was outside, hands on her hips, talking to Deputy Thomas Harland, a tall, broad-shouldered man in his early 40s, with a creased forehead and deep-set, dark brown eyes. Thomas was a native of Gallatin County, a Montanan by birth, the son of a former law enforcement officer. Calm, reserved, but insightful, known for only speaking when it mattered. He wore a wool-lined sheriff's coat and spoke in a deep, slow voice. "I just spoke to the Belgrade Police Department," he said, glancing at the glass behind which Rachel was sitting. "Toby Moore was reported missing 3 days ago. Deceased mother. Custody transferred to the grandmother. This woman was never mentioned. She is not a legal guardian, nor a friend of the family. Nothing." Olivia nodded. "She drugged the boy to keep him quiet. This is more than despair." Ranger's behavior, the K9 German Shepherd, wasn't just worry, it was protection. He had recognized something deeper. Thomas scratched his jaw. "Have you ever thought that dogs see things in people that we don't?" "All the time," Olivia replied. Before Thomas could say more, another agent entered the hallway. Younger, late 20s, slim, high cheekbones and nervous energy. The sign on the reflective vest read, "Eli Sutton, baggage handler, responsible for unloading and logistics." He carried a clipboard in his hand and looked from one to the other, uncertain whether to speak. I think I've seen that kid before," Eli said. Olivia turned to him. "When?" "A few days ago, maybe Tuesday morning. I was transferring from a private flight. The cargo manifest had strange paperwork, little information. But this woman," he pointed to the interrogation room, was there. I swear I had the same kid with her, wrapped very tightly, just like now. He didn't let anyone get close. Thomas took a step forward. What kind of flight was it? No passengers listed. Only one handler and her. He left and returned the next day. The name on the baggage manifest was that of a company, Everpine Psychological Consultants. Olivia tensed. Everpine, Eli nodded. Yes, I remember because this group works in a large, white building, east of the city, in the middle of the forest. I heard rumors. They say it's a therapeutic retreat, but it's weird. People come and go at night. Gates closed, without signs. As Olivia processed the information, Ranger let out a low, vibrant yelp. He turned his head to the entrance, as if waiting for someone. Olivia knelt beside him, running her hand along his back. You're still waiting for the truth, aren't you, boy? He licked her hand once and sat down, ears forward. At that moment, Olivia's cell phone vibrated. It was the hospital. Paramedic Josh Grady's voice sounded over the loudspeaker. We did the kids' toxicology panel. Benadryl, yes, but also traces of clonidine. It is not over-the-counter. It is a stronger sedative, enough to completely erase a small child. He is stable now, but still sleepy. We will transfer you to the Bozeman Deaconess for overnight observation. Olivia squeezed the phone in her hand. Thank you, Josh. I owe you one. He stood up and looked at Thomas. We need to know who financed that charter flight, and who is behind that retreat center. Something tells me that Rachel didn't plan this alone. I'm going to ask for a warrant for surveillance and records, Thomas replied. But if she's connected to Everpine, we're probably facing a case of psychological manipulation. It may be bigger than it seems. Inside the room, Rachel finally raised her head. The voice, thin and trembling, came out of the intercom. I didn't mean to hurt him. It should be mine. That's what they told me. He looked like Charlie. They said they could help me bring him back. Olivia exchanged a glance with Thomas. Charlie? He asked. My son. Rachel whispered. He died, but they said he would come back in another body, that all I had to do was go get him. Who are they? Olivia pressed, entering the room, keeping her tone controlled. Rachel's hands trembled. The doctor, Everpine. He said that grief could be rewritten, that souls could be transferred. He showed me photographs, said that Toby was born on the day Charlie died. The same eyes, the same birthmark. Ranger growled softly at the door. Olivia didn't stop him. Rachel, do you remember the doctor's name? She waved slowly, tears falling. Dr. Merrick. Hal Merrick. The next morning the wind had calmed down, but the sky over Bozeman remained gray and unforgiving. Outside the Everpine Psychological Consultants building, an austere two-story structure on the edge of a pine-lined road, everything seemed too quiet. The exterior, in dark cedar wood and stone, resembled a modern lodge. As she approached with Ranger next to her, Olivia felt the same discomfort as at the airport, when the dog K9 barked at Rachel for the first time. The same weight in her stomach, the same shiver on the back of her neck. Ranger trotted alertly, but without aggressiveness. The glass door opened with a whisper, revealing a lit and heated atrium. A soft instrumental melody sounded over the speakers, supposedly soothing, but for Olivia it sounded artificial. Behind the reception was a young woman of about 28 years old, thin with pale skin, light hazel eyes and grayish blonde hair down to her shoulders. The sign read Kendra Vale. Olivia introduced herself, Detective Barnes, Gallatin County. I'm here to review records of a patient, Rachel Dwyer. Kendra blinked quickly. I'm sorry, but we can't release patient files without a warrant. Olivia held up the document. I do. And this is the Ranger, certified to accompany me. Kendra's eyes drifted to the German Shepherd, and her shoulders stiffened. Ranger stood tall and silent, staring at her, as if he had already catalogued something beneath the surface. Olivia noticed the way Kendra leaned slightly away from him, her hand shaking next to the computer mouse. I'll let Dr. Merrick's assistant know, Kendra stammered. He's not there today, but the office should have the records. I'd rather you take me there directly, Olivia said coldly. Kendra hesitated, but nodded. Of course, around here. The corridors were clean, minimalist, with frosted glass doors and euphemistic names: healing room, restoration suite, mental rebalancing. Ranger's ears wiggled with every sound. As they passed a room on the left, he stopped suddenly, raised his nose, eyes half closed. Olivia memorized the door. Creative regression therapy. Ranger let out a low breath and followed. They arrived at Dr. Merrick's office. Kendra took out a bunch of keys and opened the door. The space was spotless. Dark wood furniture, understated art, a wall of locked cabinets. "Do you know where Rachel Dwyer's file is?" Olivia asked. "Maybe in the restricted drawer." Dr. Merrick kept a few records apart. It said it was to protect privacy. "Open, please." The room at the Gallatin County Sheriff's Office had plain gray walls, a metal table, 2 chairs, and a digital recorder flashing silently in one corner. Olivia Barnes stood by the observation glass, arms crossed, jaw clenched. On the other side of the glass, seated with an unsettling composure, was Dr. Hal Merrick. Hal was in his early 60s, thin, clean-shaven, gray hair slicked back from a broad, intelligent forehead. He wore a dark gray cardigan over a cream sweater, conveying the calm and approachable professionalism that had earned him praise in his early years as a trauma therapist. But now, under the fluorescent light, there was an emptiness behind her pale blue eyes, a glow of detachment that Olivia had learned to recognize in those who believed she could rewrite the truth in her favor. Opposite him was Detective Ray Sleason, a short, rugged, soft-spoken investigator known more for strategic pauses than direct threats. Ray, who had spent 25 years extracting confessions from suspects too confident to realize they were caught, leaned back in his chair, letting the silence linger a few seconds beyond comfort. Dr. Merrick finally spoke. "I assume this is about Rachel Dwyer," Ray nodded slowly, "and about the child, Toby Moore." Merrick intertwined his fingers. "They have no evidence that links me to any criminal act. Rachel was patient, a grieving mother. Fragile, yes, but also willing. Everything was voluntary." Ray did not answer. Instead, Olivia entered the room with Ranger, the canine German Shepherd, by her side. The moment Merrick saw the dog, he tensed up. Not with fear, but with something closer to calculus. Olivia sat down in front of him, leaving Ranger sitting next to his leg. "We have your notes," she said. Handwritten records detailing how he encouraged Rachel to accept a belief system in which the deceased child would have returned in the body of another child. "Reframing grief is a common therapeutic approach," Merrick replied calmly. "You will find similar methods in most integrative trauma practices." Olivia leaned forward, "Not when it ends with sedated children and false identities." At that moment, Ranger stood up and approached Merrick. His stance changed immediately. He was no longer neutral. The ears advanced, the paws moved away slightly, and the head lowered enough to signal dominance. He didn't bark. Still, but a low growl vibrated in his chest. "Your dog doesn't seem very well trained," said Merrick. "He reacts only when there is danger," Olivia said in a low tone, "and he is never wrong." Ranger let out a higher-pitched growl, which echoed in the closed room. Olivia made a subtle sign with her hand, and the dog returned to her side, keeping his eyes fixed on Merrick with sharp precision. Outside, Ray knocked twice on the table and left, waving at Olivia. They had enough for now. Later that afternoon, Olivia was in the records division of the sheriff's office, surrounded by yellowed files and stained coffee pastes. He had ordered the team to cross-reference Merrick's employment history with cases involving loss of custody or psychiatric reevaluation. It was then that he met Melissa Hartley, a woman in her 35s from Fort Collins, Colorado, a former teacher. 2 years earlier, Melissa had suffered a mental health crisis after the sudden death of her baby son. She had been committed to a private retreat in the Colorado Rockies, run by a former associate of Merrick's. After 6 weeks of treatment, Melissa claimed that her son had not died, but had reincarnated into another boy. He tried to remove the child from a daycare center. When confronted, she insisted that the boy was her Charlie, the same name used by Rachel. Olivia asked to speak to Melissa, now under guardianship in a community home. When the video call began, he saw a thin woman, deep dark circles, long, scruffy hair, mouth clenched, but his eyes lit up when Ranger entered the frame. "He was there," Melissa said. "The dog. I remember him from the photographs in the corridor of Everpine. They had a wall with dogs used in trauma recovery." "Are you sure?" Olivia asked. Melissa nodded. "They said that dogs helped people remember who they were. But that was not what they did. They used the photos to suggest ideas. Dr. Merrick told me that I wasn't hallucinating, just misremembering. That Charlie's spirit had moved on, and that I had to follow him. Did anyone give you medication during these sessions? Melissa's voice dropped to a whisper. Yes. He said it was to help me sleep, but sometimes he didn't remember whole days. When the call ended, Olivia was silent. Ranger rested his head on his knee. She scratched behind his ears and muttered, "We're not just dealing with a broken system. We are dealing with a man who builds them." That night, he drove to Eleanor's house in Belgrade. The porch light cast a warm glow over the snow-dusted steps. Inside, Eleanor poured tea from a worn-out ceramic mug and handed it to him. "I found something," Eleanor said. He took out of an old shoebox a drawing. Lines of crayons on crumpled paper. It was a children's drawing. A dog and a small boy. The names, written in the trembling handwriting of a child. Ranger and Toby. The figures were surrounded by stars. "He used to talk to the dog as if he were his best friend," Eleanor said, her voice breaking. "Maybe that's why the ranger recognized him. Or maybe something deeper." Olivia studied drawing, her heart heavy but resolute. Whatever Merrick has done, he won't do it again. A thin curtain of snow covered the northern edge of Bozeman, enveloping the pine trees and the silent fields that surrounded the walled estate of Dr. Hal Merrick. The house stood on the edge of a wooded escarpment, modern glass and steel architecture combined with dark wood beams, more like a retreat center than a private residence. To Olivia Barnes, it was just another facade, like everything Merrick had built around her. The search warrant had arrived shortly after dawn. A tactical team of 4 was waiting, accompanied by Olivia, Detective Ray Skinson, and Ranger, whose calm posture hid the tension in her body. Kendra Vale was nearby, wrapped in a coat borrowed from the sheriff's department, blonde hair tied in a tight ponytail, pale, exhausted, but determined. "I know the entrance isn't obvious," she said quietly. "It's behind a bookshelf in his office. He told me it was a winery, but he never let anyone in." "Let's go," Olivia said, beckoning to the team. The interior of the house was impeccable. The living room had no signs of personal clutter, just hand-picked art and strategically placed books. Ranger's fingernails tinkled on the polished wooden floor as he went, sniffing deliberately. He stopped by the fireplace, then turned to the corridor that led to Merrick's office. The cabinet was cooler than the rest of the house. Dark leather chairs, a polished desk, and a large bookcase occupied the back wall. Kendra came closer, hesitated, then reached the bottom of the bookcase and pressed a small panel. A soft click was heard, and the entire unit slid forward a few inches, revealing a narrow staircase descending into the darkness. The air grew colder as they descended. Olivia lit the lantern, the beam sweeping away exposed stone and steel shelves. At the bottom, they entered a space the size of a double garage, but the contents ran cold in their blood. A complete baby's room. The room was filled with a silent force. "I don't know how to thank you," Eleanor said, her voice low. "I feel like I've woken up from a nightmare." Olivia looked at the files in her hands, lists of Merrick's former patients, some marked as receptive, others as resistant. Some had addresses, others did not. "We're just getting started," he replied. Ranger, lying on the carpet between them, let out a soft yelp, as if to confirm. The hallway outside the pediatric ward of Bozeman Deaconess Hospital smelled faintly of antiseptic and lavender body wash. Now he was calm. The chaos of the previous days had been replaced by soft footsteps and the occasional beep of a monitor. The sunlight poured in through the tall windows, casting golden rectangles over the linoleum floor. Olivia Barnes stood by the door of room 312, arms crossed casually, the navy blue uniform of the K-9 unit still creased from the long morning. Her red hair tied in the usual bun, with a few loose strands framing her face. Next to him, Ranger was lying in a sphinx position, eyes half closed, but his ears moving with every little sound. His presence at the hospital had been authorized due to his history of service and connection to the case. He had not left Toby's side since the boy had been hospitalized. Inside, a nurse with dark curls and a soft voice adjusted the serum line. The plaque on the chest read, "Kelsey R.T." Little Toby Moore was curled up in bed, in navy blue pajamas emblazoned with white stars. Her cheeks were fuller, the color had returned to her skin. The sedatives had left the system, and, although he still spoke little, He was already beginning to follow movements with his eyes. But there was still distance in his gaze. Eleanor Moore was standing outside the glass, motionless. She wore a simple blue blouse and gray pants, her silver hair tied up in a low updo. In his hands he held a worn-out teddy bear, with a gnawed ear, the knuckles of the white fingers of so much strength. Olivia approached slowly. "He's been stable for 2 days," he said softly. "No sign of regression. This morning they were discharged from the last tests." Eleanor did not immediately respond. His eyes fixed on the small figure inside. "Do you think he remembers me?" Olivia hesitated. "I think he remembers what it's like to feel safe. And this, he knew with you." Inside the room, Ranger stood up. He didn't bark. He did not hurry. She walked silently to the bed and sat down next to her. Toby turned his head. His gaze rested on the dog. For a moment, it was like watching someone try to find a word they almost forgot to say. Then the little fingers stretched out, slowly, hesitantly, as if testing a memory. When the hand touched the top of Ranger's fur, the boy blinked and the silence broke. He laughed. A short, sudden, loud and clear sound. Then he said a word, "Ra." Eleanor's knees gave way. Olivia took her by the arm. "I'm here," Eleanor whispered. "I'm here, my dear." Inside, Nurse Kelsey retreated. Ranger gently pushed his nose against Toby's palm and then leaned against him. The boy hugged the dog's neck with all the strength of a child who had been deprived of it. Moments later, Dr. Harland, the pediatrician in charge, entered. A soft-spoken man, in his early 40s, with a kind face and slightly hunched. The navy blue uniforms impeccably passed. The voice with the serenity of someone who has seen miracles and losses. "You're reacting well," he confirmed. "Physically, he's strong. What comes next is above all emotional repair, and it has already begun." Eleanor wiped away her tears and entered the room for the first time. The instant Toby turned to her, his body stiffened for a moment, uncertain. So Ranger placed himself between the two, not to block, but to drive. He let out a soft breath, pushing Eleanor forward with his shoulder. "Toby," she whispered, "it's Grandma. Do you remember your grandmother?" The boy blinked. Olivia saw her brow furrow, her lips quivering. "So the bear." Eleanor lifted the one-eared toy. Toby's eyes opened. He held out his hand. When Eleanor gave it to her, he pressed it to his chest and stared at her. After a moment, he murmured, "My bear." And after another breath, "Grandmother." The barrier broke. Eleanor fell to her knees by the bed, hugging her grandson with all the delicacy that the moment allowed. Toby didn't back down. He leaned against her. The bear was crushed between the two. Ranger sat by the bedside, watching in silence. At that moment, no one spoke. No one moved. The room had become a sacred place. In the hallway, Olivia let the weight of the moment settle on her chest. Kendra Vale was waiting there. The young Everpine nurse was under temporary protection, but had asked to see the meeting from a distance. His face pale, but his eyes were no longer fogged by fear. "He's safe now," he said. Olivia waved. "Because of you." "I wish I had spoken sooner," Kendra murmured. "You spoke when it mattered." Ranger stepped out of the room, his tail moving gently. He passed by Olivia's leg and sat next to her. She looked down. "You knew before all of us." That night, as dusk fell over Bozeman, a press release confirmed that Dr. Hal Merrick had been officially charged with several federal crimes, including illegal sedation of minors, psychological manipulation, and conspiracy to kidnap. Rachel Dwyer had been placed under psychiatric evaluation at a state security hospital. But the city, that night, did not talk about the legal victories. He spoke of Ranger, the dog that had barked when others fell silent, the one who stood firm in the storm, motionless, unshaken, the guardian who brought the boy home. Spring had begun to dawn gently over the rolling hills of Belgrade, Montana. The last mounds of melting snow seeped into the earth, leaving damp spots on the grass and the smell of pine thawing. The sun, shy but steady, warmed the tranquil air. And in a small park behind the community library, laughter rang like a bell. Toby Moore, now 3 years old, and with a quiet resilience that few children need to earn, laughed as he chased a yellow tennis ball across the soft turf. The rosy cheeks, the curls rustling in the wind, With small arms but enormous determination, he picked up the ball and turned to find Ranger watching him intently, his tail wagging. "Go get it!" Toby shouted, throwing the ball with all the force his arms could muster. Ranger, strong and swift, departed like lightning. The German Shepherd's body moved with purpose, its black and brown fur glistening in the sun, muscles undulating under its coat. He picked up the ball mid-rebound, trotted back with his mouth open and breathing happy, and left it at Toby's feet before giving him a gentle nudge with his nose. Toby let out a squeal of joy and hugged Ranger's neck. Nearby, Eleanor Moore was sitting on a wooden bench under a flowering birch tree. His face, once tired, now radiated heat. He wore a light lavender cardigan and worn jeans, his silver curls hidden under a wide-brimmed hat. On his lap, a notebook with a list of names, volunteers, and phone numbers. Next to her was Olivia Barnes, already out of uniform, in a denim jacket over a soft green blouse and khaki pants. There was something lighter about his posture now. The stiff lines of his shoulders had softened. He watched the boy and the dog with a half-smile on his lips. "Have you ever wondered," Eleanor said, "what would have happened if the Ranger hadn't barked that day?" Olivia let out a long, steady sigh. "Every day." And then I remember that he always knew. Ranger had been honored the previous week at the Gallatin County ceremony. A simple and moving event, attended by law enforcement, local families, and children. It was officially named K-9 of the Year. Olivia made the speech, her voice firm, even with her eyes shining with emotion. He was never trained to detect danger in people. But somehow, after all that's been through, he's become a protector anyway. A silent guardian for Toby, for others, and for all of us who might have looked the other way. Ranger didn't need the medal they gave him. All he needed was what he now had in front of him, a boy who trusted him, a community that celebrated him, and a quiet field where he could run free. "And you?" Eleanor asked, casting Olivia a sideways glance. "What's next?" Olivia hesitated, then sat down next to her. "I accepted a transfer. A state-level task force is being formed, focused on child danger and missing persons. It will involve traveling, but I need to do this. I can't forget what we discovered, and I can't turn my back on the children who are still out there waiting to be found." Eleanor waved, her expression solemn but proud. "You were made for this, just like the Ranger was made for Toby." Olivia looked out over the field. "Speaking of which, how is the new project going?" Eleanor's eyes lit up. He opened the notebook to the first page. At the top, in capital letters, it read, "Ranger's Refuge. Now it's real," he said. "We've already signed the lease for the old vet clinic on Main Street. Volunteers are lining up coaches, therapists, host families, and the first 2 rescues arrive tomorrow. Are you really going to turn stray dogs into therapy dogs?" "Not just loafers," Eleanor corrected softly. "Survivors, like the Ranger, like Toby." They fell into a comfortable silence. In the distance, Toby had thrown himself at the Ranger on the grass and was stretched out on his back like a contented kitten. The dog didn't care. He stood still, his tail hitting the ground. Olivia took a picture with her cell phone. Another memory to keep in this chapter that had begun with so much chaos and fear and now blossomed into hope. When the sun went down, casting golden light through the young leaves, Eleanor stood up and called, "Toby, 5 minutes more!" The boy raised his face, his hair unkempt, his cheeks flushed with joy. "All right, grandmother." Ranger stood up and barked playfully. Toby laughed, grabbed the ball and threw it with all the force he could muster. Olivia watched them for a long moment longer. "We never gave up on him," he murmured. "And he never gave up on us," Eleanor agreed. "Because some guardians don't need to speak to be heard." Ranger stopped in the middle of the field, the ball in his mouth, his eyes fixed on the 2 women, and for a moment it seemed that he understood every word. Sometimes God sends us his angels, not with wings but with fur and silent eyes that see what no one else sees. Ranger wasn't just a dog. He was a guardian, a bridge between pain and healing, between fear and faith. In a world that is so often too noisy to hear the silent cry of the lost, it was his instinct, born of suffering and redemption, that brought a little boy back home. This story reminds us that no matter how dark the days may seem, light always finds a way, sometimes in the form of a child's laughter, a grandmother's unwavering hope, or a dog that simply refused to look away. We are never truly alone in our battles. Even in silence, God is at work. So if you've ever wondered if miracles still happen, let this be your answer. If this story has touched your heart, share it with someone who needs hope today. Leave a comment with how you feel and write Amen if you believe in second chances, divine protection, and the silent heroes that God places in our path. May God bless you, you and all the silent guardians of your life.